For entrepreneurs, being a business owner selling on Amazon is the only path they seek. For others, there's desire to take the corporate track, being an e-commerce marketing manager of Amazon. Today, we talk to an aspiring Amazon e-commerce marketing manager, Jacob Privette, about his path. Jacob's a former agency employee at My Amazon Guy, and he's seen both sides of this equation. So Jacob, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Well, I know you just got married a couple of weeks ago, as I understand it. So how's the married life?
It's pretty great. It's basically having extra arms and legs as well as a brain. Whenever my brain's off, she kind of takes over, and it's been pretty fantastic.
Great. So getting married during this COVID mess, I'm sure has been strange, to say the least.
It was wild. We basically didn't even have all of our siblings at the ceremony we had, and then our whole reception situation was kind of abrupted, and we did like some drive-through stuff for social distancing, and it was pretty wild.
So people came to your reception like waving out of the car?
Basically, it felt kind of like a little parade, which was nice.
Well, that can be difficult or challenging, to say the least. Well, cool. So let's talk Amazon. So for our listeners' sake, I've set you up. I've mentioned that you used to work at My Amazon Guy. I think you were the second employee I hired, in fact.
Yeah. So previous to working for Steven at My Amazon Guy, I worked for a company called Uber. At the time, it was this brand new idea called Uber Eats. And so I was brought in as one of the people to help the restaurants partner with us and basically strengthen that relationship, because Uber had this existing platform they utilized for riders. And they thought, hey, if we did food delivery, we could use the same logistics system. And so we launched that in Atlanta. And that was really interesting. It kind of gave me a view into what it's like to open a market. Less e-com, but more just like what is it actually like to have boots on the ground and be able to launch a product digitally using a similar idea that they had previously for ride sharing.
And you worked at My Amazon Guy almost a year, and then went over to a place called Inception. So what was that?
So Inception is really cool. So they had about 20 employees when I joined. They're at around 80, 90 now. And so they had this really interesting idea of using blockchain technology in order to connect websites across the globe and basically turn them into marketplaces. We ended up getting a partnership with UPS and doing some logistics through that particular relationship there. But my team, we were involved with basically getting the lead from sales after it was closed and nurturing that relationship, and then also teaching them about e-commerce and basically helping them buff up their presence online so that way they could utilize our services more frequently.
That's great. And so you've seen a bunch of different startup businesses. You've seen the corporate side. And so in our conversation today, we're kind of going to be talking about, what it's like to be on the corporate side versus go on your own and be an entrepreneur, right? So this podcast is especially great for those that want to have a career on the corporate side. So let's talk first question on this. If I was somebody in college today or just graduating, what would you recommend they do to have a career in e-commerce? And why is it go work at My Amazon Guy or another agency?
So getting hands-on experience is really, really important. Before I worked for Steven, I had dabbled a little bit with some Google ads and some Instagram stuff for some personal passion projects that I had, but I didn't have the hands-on experience that was really beneficial. I was able to be mentored by yours truly, Stephen Pope over here. And it was really intriguing because a lot of these conceptual ideas that I was having regarding growing products online or growing brands, I was actually being able to directly affect by running pay-per-click campaigns or learning a little bit about page optimization or the SEO side of Amazon. So if I were a prospective college student or recent graduate, I would go out and grab whatever tools I could learn online and then find a job that would allow me to have hands-on experience. You can be incredibly successful on both the corporate side of things as well as the agency side of things as long as you have that actual tangible experience. It's really hard to go get a job that says senior blank 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 when you have no underlying experience, regardless of what formal education you have.
And during that process, what kind of skills have you picked up that you may not have predicted would come in handy?
One thing I think that was really interesting is I don't think you're really sold how much you need to rely on a Google Sheets or an Excel or some kind of macro function where you actually have to be able to look at the data and interpret that, but more specifically, make it easier on you by learning how to use one of those platforms in order to build formulas for X, Y, and Z. What was interesting is I didn't understand how much on the financial side of things you have to really play into how profitable is this particular transaction going to be, right? I know I might know my customer acquisition cost is $10 for this particular product, but how does that really affect my bottom line? And that was something I think that kind of you have to develop really quickly if you want to be successful in e-commerce, because you can just throw money at a problem all day, every day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to end up being fruitful in the long term.
So let's talk about this acquisition costs and the bottom line. Frequently I'm in conversations with clients all the time. They're on a pathway to profitability. There's this big friction between profit and the financials and growth. And they kind of butt heads, and it's a normal, healthy friction, in my opinion. Most of the time when a client hires my Amazon guy, they want growth, and they're hiring us as marketers because they want more exposure. But often the times when you're on the corporate side and you're doing things internally versus hiring an agency, chances are they actually care more about profit. So when you're talking about these financials and profitability calculations, like totally makes sense to me why they might come in handy. So from your experience, how do you balance those two things, and why is it different in a corporation versus, say, when you're side hustling or you're your own boss?
So it's pretty interesting. So when you're side hustling, your entire goal is basically get that passive income going. That way you can do
Yes,
more
because
and more.
Amazon is passive income. Everybody knows this,
Exactly,
right? Cough, cough.
exactly, right.
Keep going.
And when you work for a corporation, you're not playing with your own money. You're either playing with stockholders' money, you're playing with money that has come in from another side of the business. And so you're having to look at it very differently, because you're having to basically get things that you're doing approved by different channels, because it's no longer just a willy-nilly go out there and like swing the bat a bunch. Every bat swing has to be super calculated, because you have no clue that if you end up spending the wrong $1,000 here, the negative effects you're going to see on another part of your profit and loss spreadsheet that we talked about a little bit earlier. And so I think the biggest change between doing it yourself and working for a corporate entity is the quantity of decision makers goes up significantly. When I'm just going out there and I'm like, okay, I really think this particular keyword is really going to yield a good ROAS, so a good return on ad spend, I won't actually know that if it's just for myself until I spend some of my own cash. Whereas if I work for an organization, I might not have the ability to spend on that particular word because it doesn't align with some other decision maker and how they view that particular product. And
There's,
so it,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. So it really comes down to basically really having a holistic understanding of the product and your company's desires, because you really have to find a great way of finding the keywords that are going to help you rank correctly, and also finding what other people in the company are comfortable spending money on. And it kind of comes to a crux, and there are going to be times where you're going to be pretty far apart, but for the most part, you're trying to basically align yourself with the brand, the company goals, and at the same time, do everything you do profitably, or at least minimize the bleeding when you're going to have to spend to grow a product.
One of the biggest jokes in marketing is, everybody's wasting half of their spend in marketing, but nobody knows which half. So in a corporation, that scrutiny can be a lot higher. And so just, for those that are listening, that, if you want to become on the corporate side, just be prepared to analyze this with fine tooth and comb sometimes. So Jacob, what would you say the biggest differences between growing a corporate Amazon account versus your own entrepreneur side, beyond the money play, if you will?
Sure. I think a lot of it comes down to expectations are typically very different. So you're going to fail no matter what you do. You're going to make mistakes, and the penalty for those mistakes feel a lot differently when they come from you doing your own thing versus now this is your not only your passive income that you're working on, but now this is your livelihood. So when you make, that $10,000 mistake because you're human, you're risking an entire 10 plus person organization, and so it feels a lot differently mentally, and you kind of have to
I almost look at that failure as more of a investment or an experiment, if you will, right? So even if you get zero sales off that 10K in ad spend, that's data that you've collected, right?
Oh, most definitely. And you like, regardless of what side you're on, you're going to have to utilize that data to drive your next decision point. There's almost like this like fork in the road where it's like, okay, so like you're going to set up the product the same way regardless if it's you or your corporate entity that you're working for, right? You're going to use the same correct title. You're going to use the same correct bullet points, the same correct search terms. You're going to do everything the same. But when it comes down to, okay, this is a product that I'm going to actually be able to invest some in when it comes to advertising, and this is the product that I don't think is a winner. Maybe it's price point. Maybe it's we don't have enough products in our DC that if this product does well, we're going to be able to sell through in the correct circumstance. And you just have this kind of divergence right here where you're basically trying to pick the winners and then let the data tell you if you were right or wrong.
And there's a lot of other constraints that corporations have sometimes, right? So like if you have an omni-channel company, you've got distribution control issues, MAP pricing, that stands for minimum advertised pricing. Those sort of things can make it harder, right?
Oh, most definitely. When I'm selling the same product to 3 or 4 wholesalers that are selling it in different countries, as well as they're selling it on 10 different websites, I have to be really particular with the messaging I'm using because I don't want to upset any stakeholder that might be selling another place. Like a great example of this is what you mentioned with MAP. If I want to sell my product online for $1 less than that, I'm violating agreement I have with someone who's selling it in a brick and mortar store, and it's really going to mud up that whole system because then they can come back and they can go undercut me on Amazon because we've already violated the deals. And that's actually something that's really common is you see people you wholesale to that will utilize some little loopholes in order to try to undercut you on your own listings. And that can be really detrimental to being able to grow a product because if you can't profitably sell it at X99, then selling it at X minus 199 is going to be really tough.
Yeah, it can be tough, especially if you want to run promotions or you need to liquidate something. It gets really, really difficult. So those are definitely things to keep in mind. All right, so let's talk people and culture. So this is something that I've really been thinking a lot about the past 90 days. I recently made a decision that I'm going to build my agency to hold. I'm never going to sell it. And questions of like, hey, what would it take to get an employee to stay at my Amazon guy for 5, 10, or even 15 years? I've never asked those questions before. And so when you're working in a corporation, everybody's, they're working on their resume. They're trying to grow their career. They're trying to gain skills and expertises. And there's also different departments you have to interact with, whether it's logistics, marketing, operations, finance, you name it. So what's something that you've learned about working with people and culture, and what are your thoughts on that?
So it's really interesting. I think the size of your business will heavily impact the way, like where you're at. So like a great example of this is when I worked at Inception, we actually went through a few different growth phases where we would add, 40 headcount and then sit on that for 6 months and then add 40 headcount and sit on it, right? At each stage of a business, you're going to have a different mental culture that's there. Regardless of what stage you're at, the best way to keep employees is to make them feel valued. So that comes through, constructive criticism. That comes through, having performance reviews with people, basically setting clear KPIs, so clear goals that they can accomplish on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis. When you set those, regardless of the size of your company, you're really going to have a clear relationship with your employees, so they can understand where they stand, so they can understand and feel more comfortable at that particular position. Once you start scaling up headcount, you typically lose a lot of this like one-on-one interaction, either with the CEO or whoever's running the ship. And so as a company gets bigger, you can often feel like I have, as a lower level employee, I have less to do to contribute to this company's success. And so setting those clear expectations in each role, regardless of how defined the role is, can really have a big play on how employees are going to feel. Now, from the employee side, when you're trying to climb this corporate ladder, you have to do a really great job of developing relationships with people. It can be even more difficult when you're remote because you can't see each other. And you can't have a one-on-one interaction where you can just ask, something about their personal life to kind of diffuse any work tension that might be there. But, outside of the COVID landscape where we're all remote, it's really important basically just to make friends with people. And it's not like these are your best friends that you have to invite, to your wedding.
Sure.
But these are people that you really have to at least get along with. And so, like you mentioned, especially when you're working on a corporate Amazon account, you're dealing with a ton of different people across different aspects of the business that have different roles, right? So whether it's them trying to do product development, or there's the accounting side of things, then there's the distribution side of things. Just that alone, that's 3 different departments that you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to have to do your best to basically get across your point in an eloquent way without having to step on toes. I think something that was really tough for me when I was earlier on my career is I'm a very blunt person. And so I had to learn really quickly. I had one of my managers when I worked at Uber that sat me down and was like, you just have to be nicer. When you're on a phone call, when you're on an email chain, you have a tendency of just being really flat with people. And I was like, I'm such a warm and bubbly person,
Right.
Why
Yeah, that's surprising.
And she was like, look, you just have to think, like, what is the other person going to think when I give them the message? Like, the message could literally be, hey, can you come over here? I just need to talk to you for a second. But if you don't say that in a way that's going to make them not feel scared, like a great example of this is I'm talking to, one of my direct reports, and I'm like, hey, I need this today. If I just say that person could be panicked because they're like, well, why is it more urgent now? Like, what changed? It's all about giving the information for people to understand and be able to take a deep breath. Like, hey, if you don't mind, I need this by the end of the day because my direct supervisor is requesting it. That way they can kind of get an understanding. Here's the task at hand. Here's the urgency, and here's the why. I think often what happens is when we give asks to people, we do a really bad job of explaining the why. And most of the time we're like, oh, it saves time not to ask the why, but it really goes a long way in building that relationship so that people understand I care about you. And yes, we're workplace associates, but we also are a part of the same team,
It makes a lot of sense. So there's this really cool app called Crystal Knows, and I've started paying attention to this. So Jacob didn't know I'm going to bring this up, and I've been reviewing Culture Index, Predictive Index, Crystal Knows, Disc Profiles. Like, I've really been eating this stuff up. Like, I'm reading and talking hours and hours of investment on this. So as Jacob's talking about communicating with people, so I was like, oh, I haven't actually done this yet. I'm going to go on Jacob's LinkedIn profile. I'm going to push this Chrome extension button for Crystal Knows. I'm just curious what personality profile it spits out. And Jacob, you come out as a harmonizer. So everything you just talked about is in line with this quote unquote, personality test, if you will, that just looks at the words on your LinkedIn.
That's kind of fun.
So Jacob tends to be energized by teaching and interacting with others, prioritizing relationships over immediate achievement. And it's really fascinating because that was directly in line with what we were just talking about. And so on my profile, I'm an architect. So I try and figure out how something works. I pull the levers, and my passion is seeing the results. And we're actually on the opposite side of the spectrum, right? So so Jacob is really good within working with teams, and I'm really good at either A, ordering those teams, or B, or B, just being on my own and deconstructing something. So what are your thoughts on the harmonizer thing? And sorry to ambush you with your random
Oh, don't worry
personality
about it.
publicly here, but
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I think the way I kind of was designed was to be able to lead teams. I think my long-term goal is to be able to have a team of people that I can be able to help not only grow as people, grow as professionals, but also grow in whatever company that I work for. My personality comes down to wanting to help. I don't really get joy at the end of the day after working unless I have directly helped or helped a person do something new. I think part of that teaching aspect of me is I spent a semester in a special ed classroom, and it was really interesting because I basically with a lot of children with special needs, you often have to teach the same thing over and over again, right? Because the often a lot of the developmental side of these children are a little delayed, and so if I'm trying to teach the same math question every day the same way, I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time. And so you have to start thinking outside of the box, teaching 1+1 slightly different ways and explaining it different ways and using metaphors and whatnot. And it really carried over into the rest of my professional career, where I will have to explain some kind of digital analytic. This is super common. Like, why did this particular product succeed or fail? When you don't have all the information, it can be really hard. But what you can do is rely on the information you have and kind of the background knowledge. And so you can explain like, hey, this product failed. Here are the possible reasons, right? Maybe we're at the price point wrong. Maybe we did something wrong when it came to the title where people were confused about the particular product. Maybe we sent traffic from the wrong location. And so where my personality really thrives is being able to explain that information. Look at either a data set or look at a problem and be able to talk it out and explain it. I thrive a lot off of throwing ideas off of people. I like to think that I have, a virtual ball on my wall. I'm just playing wall ball all
nice.
day. Just throwing things and going, okay, does this make sense? Because that's where I really am able to use this analytical side of myself. So you want to have an open conversation, talk about what's wrong, and then figure out and problem solve and then pivot accordingly.
So I'm a pretty cold person, or so I think I am. And I'm an introvert, right? Like I'm like straight up facts only, emotion, who cares about that, those emotional, ball of feelings and whatever, right? Even I can't even describe it well on the fly here, which kind of demonstrates my lack of ability in this area. So, and I bring this up because I've been trying to strengthen my weakness here, and I've tried to use tools. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I feel weak in this area too, I recommend that you do some reading. Go look whether it's Briggs or whether it's DISC or whatever it might be. You can even just try a free trial of Crystal Knows and go on people's LinkedIn's profiles, because it gives you some tips. It says, when communicating with certain people, if you are at this profile and they're that profile, then you should speak a little bit differently. Right. So Jacob is most, according to this tool, right? And Jacob basically just said this, but the tool says it too. Jacob is motivated most by engaging conversations, positive verbal recognition, connecting deeply with others, right? And he's stressed by feeling ignored or rejected or direct verbal conflict or working alone too long. So like, this is pretty accurate information coming out of a free trial tool going on LinkedIn. So I would check it out. All right, so we kind of hit that one home. Let's talk a little bit more about culture and interacting. So you mentioned investing in relationships and that how important that is. And I think a lot of people need to do more investing in relationships than they might think or know about. So, for example, we have a relationship that we've invested in, and it's helped both of our careers. It's helped both of us, as I've mentored you, or if you've kind of brought ideas to me. Why do you feel like long-term relationships matter so much to your career path?
So I think the interesting part about any community, so referring to the e-commerce community here, is it's always more tight-knit than you would think. So when you're developing a relationship with someone, whether personal or professional, one thing you have to realize is this person, regardless of where they're at in their career, could continue to be on whatever playing field they're on, right? And maybe take that step up every time they get a promotion, or they could be a rocket ship. one thing that taught me really, really early on is I had a lot of friends that I just would hang out with. And then they started to have success on this, not new at the time, but a budding platform called YouTube. And so they kept just making videos and doing better and better. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is just someone I care about that happens to be making a career online. And it taught me really early that like, I'm some of those people I would have never expected to flourish in that particular role. And you're like, wow, they make YouTube videos for a living now and get paid millions of dollars to do so. And it taught me like, okay, these are people that some of them I didn't even have high expectations for. You're like, that was an okay first video, bud. Like, glad you tried it out. But they ended up hitting literally, I mean, I was a part of one video and now we're almost at like 70 million viewers or something crazy. And it was literally just a video that we were all like, this was a cute idea. But it taught me that even like people, like whatever you expect of people, they're going to go higher than that. Not every single time is this going to happen, but at some point in their life, they're going to do something great. And if you've kept a positive relationship with them, then you can enjoy it with them, right? Regardless of what positive, advantageous things that they might do for you in the future. If you're good and kind to everyone you meet, especially inside of an e-commerce world where people turn into, overnight millionaires so quickly, or at least, you would see by watching a bunch of podcasts, you just never know what little advice you'll give to someone that may help them skyrocket their career, or just sometimes things just work out for other people. And it's a great way to get joy, just to build a relationship with someone, see them succeed, and just feel glad you're a part of their story. I've had so many friends that have been super successful, and often they'll be able to assist me in my career, or I'll be able to nudge them towards the right person. But in the day, it brings me so much joy to be able to kind of help them. And so the way I look at relationships is a long-term partnership. Whether you ever get helped by this person or not, help them 100% of the time. Right? It may not always mean giving them the HR number of a big company because your friend's a senior VP there, but it may come down to like, hey, look, let me look over your resume. Let me just help you for 5 seconds. Or, hey, what do you think about this particular new thing that is being introduced on Amazon? Have you tried it? I reached out to one of my other friends who's in a similar place, as in working on an e-commerce platform, Amazon, for another company on Amazon. And it was really interesting because we just had a little brief conversation. We're just good friends that used to make silly YouTube videos together back in the day. And we were just able to talk. And I tried out 3 different things based off the conversation on Amazon. And one of them ended up being able to provide a really great ACOS, and it really benefited my career. And it was just interesting, just little conversations, just saying happy birthday to people on their birthday, telling them happy anniversary on their wedding anniversary. Those kind of little things really add up to, I may not have seen this person in 4 years, but they're like, hey, I thought of you for X, Y, and Z. You should talk to my friend Paul, who could really help you out.
I definitely think e-commerce is a tight-knit community. Totally agree. Makes perfect sense to me. All right. So tying back into our podcast topic, having a corporate career, if you will, in e-commerce and Amazon. So what would you say was the best college class that you took that nobody should miss?
Oh man, I think organizational behavior was one that I just never thought of. Basically, the way the teacher taught the class was more about the psychology of business than anything else. I don't know how much we stuck to the particular class curriculum.
Sure.
But we ended up watching. It was really funny. So the first class, we'd watch an episode of The Office and then talked about what Michael Scott did wrong. And if any of you know me, I'm a huge Office fan. I've watched it 11 times. I can probably quote any episode, any season, anytime.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a little sad, but I mean, it's great. Michael Scott and I are beautiful things. And we both feel a lot, so I really empathize with his character. And so he basically looked at a scene, and it was just Michael doing something dumb, right? And so the teacher went, okay, so what did he do wrong? And you get everything oh, it's like a scripted television, so obviously it's fake, but he harassed his employer or whatnot. And then it's okay, but what was good about it? And it's well, he's at least taking the time to thank them for something, even if he's doing it in an inappropriate way or something like that. And it was just interesting because it basically helped me go, all right, so there's a positive and negative association with every action I take in my personal and professional life. When it comes to joining a corporation, I'm going to get scrutinized, whether you want it or not, on every little thing you do, not because people are bad, but because that's their first impression, right? Your first interview, your first conversation, your first day on the job, your first quarter of statistics. You're going to have to find the good and the bad in there and then learn from every little thing and understand that organizations are these weird living beasts, and you can change the culture as much as you're able to, but sometimes you're just gonna have to fail and go, awesome, what did I learn?
I would have probably been David Wallace on that show, and I would have had Michael Scott screwing up constantly, but pulling through amazing sales numbers, and I'd be like, well, I only care about the numbers, so I guess you get to keep your job.
What I think's great about David Wallace's character is he's actually played by a real professional. So Andy Buckley was an actual executive at a company, and they pulled him in so he could do a cameo or something.
Yeah,
and
just
he
being
was
himself.
so good at being himself that they kept him in. It's pretty fantastic.
All right, so what do you wish you had learned years ago that has been really helpful?
I think in the workplace, you have to be yourself. I'm such an emotional beast that there's times where it comes to your advantage and there are times where it comes to your hindrance.
Do you mean authentic?
Basically, it goes almost a level beyond that. So if I know that I'm emotional all the time, I need to put myself in situations where I can control that, but I also need to find ways to use that to my advantage, right? I know often when I get sad, I get really focused on finding a solution. I might mope for a few minutes, but I'm going to really try hard to find a solution. And so for so much, I was told, don't bring work home with you, or don't think about it like you have this work-life balance. And I learned, for me, I have to have hours where I basically don't think about work. But like if it's 2 a.m. and I have an idea, I need to get up and I need to action it. That way I can go back to bed. Because I had suppressed all these emotions of like, don't think about work. Don't think about your coworkers. Don't think about how to better X, Y, and Z. But it really taught me there's so many hours in the day that you're just going to have inspiration that's going to hit you at weird times. You're just going to act on it. And whenever you have these weird emotional peaks and troughs, you're really going to have to be able to find ways to use it to your advantage.
Certain people are more productive in the morning or at the night. And when an idea hits you, if my advice on this would be write it all down, right? So no matter where you are, always have an ability to quickly write down your ideas, because once you write them down, you no longer have to think about them. And I got that idea, years ago, but it's also kind of the main thesis of this book, audio book about getting organized. Now I'm actually totally forgetting what it's called now. I'll put it in the show notes if I can find it. All right, cool. So last couple questions for you, Jake. So what's the last book you read and what did you get out of it?
Oh boy.
Doesn't have to be work related.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to think of, I am probably better equipped to talk about random Reddit articles I find, and then I go in and I just dive into a topic. So my latest obsession has been more focused on what I can do as an individual to motivate people to either wear masks or social distance. So I had a great aunt that worked at the CDC.
Good luck on this one.
I had a great aunt. Well, she's still alive. Love her. That worked at the CDC for 30 years. And so it was pretty important to me from an early age, whenever there's something bad health-wise that goes on, to inform people and to, at least share my opinion and those of healthcare professionals. And as I've seen the craziness go on, I've become absolutely just fixated on what I can do as an individual to positively benefit other people, right? I'm the biggest hugger you will ever meet. Right. I love handshakes. I love hugs. I'm a touch person. Right. And so I've had to really try hard to find different ways to show emotion to people, especially like at my wedding and at like wedding receptions and stuff.
That must have been rough.
It was really tough. It was really, really tough because people know that I want to hug them and whatnot. And so I've just found this almost internet community of people listening to health professionals and spreading articles about, here's the latest on COVID, here are the latest COVID numbers, here's what you can do to donate to causes, because there's so many food banks and whatnot in just horrible places because of the quantity of people unemployed. It's been just wild. And so my latest obsession and my latest basically wealth or ebook worth of articles online has been focused on COVID-19 and what I could do as an individual to positively benefit those around me.
Great. Well, Jacob, I appreciate you joining me today on the My Amazon Guy podcast. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. If you want to know more about Jacob, I'll put a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes. We appreciate everybody who is listening into the My Amazon Guy podcast today. Don't forget to subscribe. We cover everything on how to sell on Amazon, everything from traffic growth to conversion improvements, everything from search engine optimization to advertising topics, tools, people, culture, processes, systems, you name it. We cover it here on the My Amazon Guy podcast. My name is Stephen Pope, and I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy.